Good morning, students. Welcome to the class on spectroscopy. Today we will discuss about the different electronic transitions that are possible for UV visible spectroscopy of organic compounds. We also see which of these transitions are possible, that is selection rules. Then we will discuss what is important for an organic compound to absorb UV visible radiation, namely oxochrome and chromophore. Then we will calculate Woodward-Fisher rules for determining the lambda maximum values for organic molecules, and we will see some previous problems. What is spectroscopic process as far as UV visible spectroscopy is concerned? In UV visible spectroscopy, as I said in the earlier classes, the sample is irradiated with a broad spectrum of monochromatic radiation, that is UV radiation. If the molecule is capable of absorbing energy, that means if there is a possibility of electronic transition from the lower energy state to a higher energy state, then molecule absorbs radiation, the remaining light will be transmitted. Now, from the residual radiation, a spectrum is obtained with gaps at these discrete energies. This is called the absorption spectrum. Whenever there are electronic transitions possible, there we can observe some peaks, some electronic transitions. If there is no electronic transition, then we don't observe any peak, we just observe some gap. Now, the lowest energy transition is typically that of an electron in the highest occupied molecular orbital to the lowest unoccupied molecular orbital. As far as organic compounds is concerned, UV visible absorptions occur when we have pi bonds. So when we have pi bonds, we used to write molecular orbitals for pi bonds. Then we represent HOMO and LUMO among the possible molecular orbitals. This we can get it from pericyclic reactions, right? So generally, in a UV visible spectrum, the possible transitions are from HOMO to LUMO. Now, how do we handle the sample? The sample preparation for UV visible data is very, very easy. As far as organic compounds are concerned, we just need to prepare a dilute solution. So we prepare a dilute solution, we will place it in a cell, then we will take the UV data. Generally, these cells can be made up of plastic, glass, or quartz glass. Plastic and glass, they are transparent in visible region. That means they don't absorb visible light. So they can be used for visible light analysis. But they are not transparent in UV region. That means they will absorb UV light. So in order to get the UV visible full spectrum, plastic and glass can be avoided. So for a complete UV visible range of radiations, quartz is the best. Quartz is transparent throughout this full UV visible range, that is from 200 to 700. Generally, we can go for 200 nanometers to 900 nanometers. So for a UV visible instrument, we use quartz cells, which are generally called as cuvettes. So cuvettes looks like this. So we prepare a dilute solution of organic compound, we place it in the cuvette, then we will place it in the instrument and we will get the data. Right. What are these electronic transitions? Generally in organic compounds, we have sigma bonds, pi bonds. At the same time, we also have atoms with non-bonding electron pairs, that is n electrons. When we have a sigma bond, there are two possible molecular orbitals. One is bonding sigma orbital, another one is anti-bonding sigma star orbital. If we have a pi bond, there are two possible molecular orbitals. One is bonding pi molecular orbital, another one is anti-bonding pi star molecular orbital. Of course, n electrons are not involved in any bonding. They belongs to a particular atom where they are. So for organic compounds, we have these 5 molecular orbitals: sigma, pi, n, pi star and sigma star. This is the order with respect to energy. Among these orbitals, what are the possible transitions? The possible transitions are from sigma to sigma star, sigma to pi star, then pi to pi star, n to sigma star, n to pi star. So among these sigma, pi, n, pi star, sigma star orbitals, there are 5 possible electronic transitions, which are sigma to sigma star, sigma to pi star, pi to pi star, n to sigma star, n to pi star. From this graph, we can clearly say that sigma to sigma star is the highest energy electronic transition, then sigma to pi star, then pi to pi star, then n to sigma star, and n to pi star is the lowest energy electronic transition. Now we can also expect in what type of molecules these electronic transitions are possible, because in alkanes we have only sigma bonds, so sigma to sigma star are possible. In carbonyl compounds, we have pi bonds as well as sigma bonds, so sigma to pi star is possible. If we have a double bond, that is unsaturation, then pi to pi star is possible. When we have atoms with non-bonding electron pairs, like nitrogen group element, oxygen group elements, halogen group elements, they'll have n electrons. So when n electrons are present, then it is possible to have n to sigma star transitions. And if we have n atoms and pi bonds, then n to pi star transitions are possible. Now, among these 5 electronic transitions, which we observe in UV visible spectrum, which we don't observe. Yeah, first we will look at the range of UV visible spectroscopy. Generally, the UV light range starts from 1 to 400 nanometers. Visible light range starts from 400 to 750. That means the complete range for UV visible spectroscopy is 1 to 750 or 800 or 900. So 1 to 900 nanometers. But below 200 nanometers, the oxygen which is present in atmosphere will absorb the radiation. So when we want to collect the UV data from 1 to 200 nanometers, obviously we are not getting the data of our compound. What we are getting is the data of the atmospheric oxygen. So oxygen is not transparent below 200 nanometers, and it will give its spectrum in the data. So in order to avoid this, what we need to do is we need to apply vacuum during the collection of data. So when we apply vacuum, all the air inside the instrument will be taken out so that oxygen is not available in the instrument. So it will not interact with the UV light. So when we want to have a full range of UV visible technique, we must have vacuum UV visible. But there is again another problem. We used to prepare dilute solution. So we dissolve our compound in a solvent. Most of the organic solvents will also absorb UV visible light from 1 to 200 nanometers. So when we collect the data from 1 to 200 nanometers, we are also collecting the data of solvents which we don't need. So from 1 to 200 nanometers, the solvents data will interfere with the compound data. So we may not get clear information about the compound. So in order to avoid these drawbacks, what people generally do is we will emit the UV range below 200 nanometers. So the actual UV visible range starts from 200, not below 200. So the actual UV visible range is 200 to 700, or we can go up to 900 nanometers. So because of this, some of the electronic transitions among the 5 possible electronic transitions, some of them may not be observed in UV visible spectroscopy. Now, when we look at the energies for these electronic transitions, sigma to sigma star electronic transition is of high energy, or in terms of nanometer wavelength, it is of low wavelength. Now, sigma to sigma star transition requires 150 nanometers of energy. Sigma to pi star requires 170 nanometers. Pi to pi star requires 180 nanometers. N to sigma requires 190 nanometers. And N to pi star transitions are generally observed at 280 nanometers. Now, among these transitions, you can see except N to pi star transitions, all other transitions are appearing below 200 nanometers. That means all these transitions will not be observed in UV visible spectroscopic data. There is one exception about pi to pi star transitions. Of course, a single pi bond absorbs the radiation at around 180 nanometers. But when we have conjugation, that means if there is one more double bond, because of the conjugation, the energy of the electronic transition will come down well beyond the 200 nanometers, so that the pi to pi star transition will also be observed. So the two possible transitions which are observed in UV visible spectroscopy is pi to pi star transition and N to pi star transition. Among all these transitions, these are all just possible transitions. Now, in reality, which transitions will occur, which transitions will not occur? This is governed by selection rules. So selection rules will tell us which transitions are possible, that means which are allowed, which transitions does not occur, that means which are forbidden. For electronic transitions, certain quantum mechanical constraints will apply. These are called selection rules. Spin selection rule. When an electron cannot change its spin quantum number, then those transitions are allowed transitions. So during an electronic transition, if the spin of the electron before transition and after transition is same, that is delta S is equal to 0, then it is an allowed transition. If the spin of the electron before transition and after transition, if it changes, that is delta S is not is equal to 0, then it is a forbidden transition. Similarly, we have many selection rules. Other examples include N2 pi star transitions are forbidden, pi to pi star transitions are allowed. There are other factors which will govern these electronic transitions. The number of electrons that can be excited at a time, symmetry properties of the molecule, symmetry of the electronic states. So all these factors will contribute, will tell us which transitions are possible, which are forbidden. Now, the basic difference between forbidden transitions and allowed transitions is sometimes it is also possible to have forbidden transitions to occur in the local electronic environments to some extent deviate from the selection rule. So sometimes it is possible to have forbidden transitions, but from the spectra we can clearly say which transitions are allowed, which transitions are forbidden. Even forbidden transitions appear, they will appear with a very less intensity. That means the height of the peak will be very low compared to allowed transitions. Allowed transitions will have a very high intensity, whereas forbidden transitions, if they are possible, they will have very low intensity. Now we will see what is responsible in an organic compound for the UV visible absorption. When we have a pi bond, then it absorbs UV visible radiation. So obviously, the main functional group in organic compounds, which is responsible for UV visible radiation, absorption of UV visible radiation, is the pi bond. So the functional group or a moiety in an organic compound which absorbs UV visible radiation is called as a chromophore. A functional group capable of having characteristic electronic transition is called a chromophore. Chroma means color. So chromophore, color loving system. When we look at the examples of functional groups which contains a pi bond, it may be a double bond, it may be a triple bond. Among the double bonds, we have a variety of double bonds: carbon-carbon double bond, carbon-oxygen double bond, carbon-sulfur double bond, carbon-nitrogen double bond, nitrogen-oxygen double bond. So any double bond or any triple bond, either carbon-carbon triple bond or carbon-nitrogen triple bond. So a pi bond is the chromophore that absorbs the UV visible radiation. Now, the substituents that are present on the chromophore, they can be characterized by observing the lambda maximum values of the electronic transition. So the type of electron distribution around the chromophore can be identified when we calculate the lambda maximum values. So that we will do in the next slide. Then, if you have a pi bond that absorbs UV visible radiation, fine. But why different compounds have different UV visible radiations? No, the electronic arrangements around the double bond will vary. So these we can say substituents on the chromophore. So these substituents will alter the lambda maximum values in UV visible spectroscopy. So the substituents that do not absorb UV visible radiation on their own, but they can increase the wavelength of the absorption when they are placed on the chromophore. So these are called as auxochromes. Generally, any substitution will alter the lambda maximum values. The common examples are alkyl groups, hydroxy groups, alkoxy groups, amino groups, and halogens. The most influencing auxochromes are either a conjugation, that means a triple bond or a double bond in conjugation to the parent system chromophore, and an atom with a lone pair of electrons, either nitrogen group or oxygen group or halogen group. So when they are present on the chromophore, they will have maximum influence on the lambda maximum values of chromophore. So different compounds will have different substituents on the chromophore, so they will have different lambda maximum values. Now, how these substituents will influence the lambda maximum? The substituents will have any of four effects on a chromophore: bathochromic shift or red shift. Bathochromic shift is the one when we observe an increase in the lambda maximum value, or in other words, when the energy of the transition decreases, we say it is a bathochromic shift. We can easily remember this from this name red shift, red light which is having longer wavelength. So when we increase the wavelength, we call it as red shift, bathochromic shift or red shift. When we decrease the wavelength, or in other words, when we increase the energy of the transition, it is called hypsochromic shift. Hypsochromic shift or blue shift, because we are increasing energy, it is called blue shift. So increase in wavelength is called red shift, decrease in wavelength is called blue shift. Similarly, the influence on the intensity is explained in terms of hyperchromic effect and hypochromic effect. If the substituents increases the intensity of absorption, that means height of the peak, then this effect is called as hyperchromic effect. If the intensity of the absorption decreases due to the presence of these substituents, it is called hypochromic effect. So commonly, the substituents on auxochromes, that is chromophores, will have any of the four effects: bathochromic shift, hypsochromic shift, hyperchromic effect, hypochromic effect. Other factors which influences the lambda maximum in UV visible spectroscopy are nature of chromophore, conjugation, nature of solvent, sterical crowding, oxochromes, and hyperconjugative substituents. We will discuss all these factors towards the end of the UV visible spectroscopy class. Now we will start explaining the nature of chromophore. The nature of chromophore, or in other words, we can say the Woodward-Fisher rules used for determining the lambda maximum values of different compounds. This is butadiene, 1,3 butadiene. It is called S trans. S means single bond. This is single bond. According to single bond, these two double bonds are in opposite planes, so it is called S trans. So from the pericyclic reactions, you know the possible molecular orbitals. Because there are 4 carbons which are involved in pi bonding, we will have 4 pi molecular orbitals, psi1, psi2, psi3, psi4. Since there are 2 pi bonds, we have 2 into 2 pi electrons. So 2 electrons in psi1, 2 electrons in psi2. So for butadiene, psi2 is called HOMO, psi3 is called LUMO. Now the possible transitions among butadiene are psi2 to psi3 because it is filled orbital, these are empty orbitals, then psi2 to psi4. Psi2 to psi4 requires 175 nanometers, generally it is forbidden transition. Psi2 to psi3 requires 230 nanometers, it is an allowed transition. In case of S-cis butadiene, again it is the same thing, but here these two transitions are allowed. The only difference is the energy difference between psi2 to psi3. So in S-cis, the energy difference is less compared to S-trans. Now, we will see the Woodward-Fisher rules for calculating the lambda maximum values of dienes. We will look at the cyclic dienes. These are called homoannular or cissoid. What is homoannular? Homoannular means if the diene is part of a single ring, then it is called homoannular. If it is in a single ring, obviously it will be in cis configuration. So it is also called as cissoid. I have given the coloring to represent the basic diene which is responsible for UV visible spectrum. Even the coloring will be useful to identify the parent in the diene. Now we have only 2 double bonds, so this is the parent. And for a cissoid, the lambda maximum is generally observed at around 253 nanometers. Now the substituents will be discussed. The substituents will further increase the lambda maximum values. So that is why it is called increments. When we have an additional double bond which is in conjugation, we need to add 30 for each such double bond. So if we have 2 double bonds in conjugation, we must add 2 into 30. If we have alkyl substituents on the parent, that means which is colored with red color, then we need to add 5 for each alkyl substituent. If we have ring residues, I'll explain what are ring residues in the next slide. So if we have ring residues, we also need to add 5 for each ring residue. Similarly, we also add 5 for each exocyclic double bond. So that means for alkyl substituents or ring residues or exocyclic double bonds, we need to add 5 for each such substituent. For a state group, we don't need to add anything. But for alkoxy group, methoxy, ethoxy, butoxy, or something, any alkoxy group, we must add 6. If chlorine or bromine is there, we need to add 5 for each such chlorine or bromine. If some sulfur group is there, we need to add 30 for each such sulfur group. If we have some amine group, then we need to add 60. Then the total, we need to add, sum up all these things so that it gives the total value. Now we will look at the Woodward-Fisher rules for heteroannular dienes, or what are called transoids. Heteroannular or transoid. If the diene is part of two different rings, then it is called heteroannular. Generally, when they are part of two different rings, most of the time they will be in trans configuration. So that is why it is called transoid. Now the basic difference between homoannular and heteroannular diene is the base value. The lambda maximum base value for a transoid is 214 nanometers, and all other increments are same. So for a cissoid, the base value or parent value is 253 nanometers. For a transoid, it is 240 nanometers. Now we will see how we apply these Woodward-Fisher rules for calculating the lambda maximum of dienes. Now we will see what is an exocyclic double bond. An exocyclic double bond is a bond which lies outside of a given ring. The given compound has 3 exocyclic double bonds. We will try to identify them. What is exocyclic double bond? A double bond which lies outside the ring. For example, take this double bond. It is inside this ring, but when we consider this ring, yes, this double bond is just outside this ring. So this double bond is exocyclic to this ring, right? Similarly, this double bond, which is part of this ring, this is endo when we say this ring, but this double